Where do we place development in all of this? I mean, we've seen the relationship in the last 1 year has been a little topsy-turvy. There's been tension. I mean,
exactly.
We've seen more probes than we've seen in a while.
Exactly.
Where do we place the role of development? Because ultimately, a host of people will say the government exists for the benefit of the people, for the well-being of the people.
Yes.
So if it's all about politicking and there is no development felt, we might be seeing, you know, anger at both. Whatever it is that they're doing right will not be felt because there is no improvement. So why do we see development in this?
I think your statement, the fact of government is for the people and should be to the benefit of the people, like you have stated. I think it is observed more in aberration in Nigeria than in positive tendencies. I think that we don't observe that principle in Nigeria. Government here is self-aggrandizement, primitive accumulation, both for the politicians and for those who are close to them. You find a situation where government officials have several personal assistants, several special assistants, special advisors, and those special advisors also have several aides too. And before you pay all these people, each of them are multi-millionaires. Before you finish paying all these people, before you get to the grassroots, how much money will be remaining to take care of the common man? And so I think that there is a far distance between between development in real terms and politicking in governance presently.
Let's also go back to the relationship or how it played out. So, we're talking about the leadership now, how the executive arm tried to influence the leadership of the National Assembly, or rather of the House of Representatives.
Yes.
Because now what we get to see on a daily basis, more or less like it, even though we have opposition in the House, we still sometimes get some unanimous decisions from the House.
Yes.
Does that imply the freedom and the independence you talked about?
Yes. Thank you for that question. And that brings to the fore the real relationship between the National Assembly, where you want to specify it into the House of Reps. But I want us to have a wholesome view of the National Assembly as a whole. I think you can divide that relationship in terms of whether they are independent or not into three: topsy-turvy, cat and mouse, and romantic. Topsy-turvy, you can see the case of the 2013 budget, where this National Assembly asked for 79, and government insisted on 75. Topsy-turvy, and eventually they passed 79, and they are expecting the executive to assent to that bill presently. That's topsy-turvy. Cat and mouse, the Ote issue. There's a palpable hatred between the National Assembly and the executive in terms of when you bring in the Ote matter to the fore. Presently, the National Assembly has refused in any way whatsoever to give any form of budgetary allocation to SEC. And I want to wonder how SEC will spend money constitutionally without breaching the law, where there is no budgetary allocation in the Appropriation Act.
Is that a trap waiting to go off in 2013?
Let's see how it plays out. And there's a romantic relationship too between the National Assembly and the presidency and the executive in the constitutional review process. It appears that they have a common enemy, and that common enemy is the general tendency for us to believe that there's a military hand in the present constitution, and they themselves think that they are the status quo. They are the de facto government and must.
So the National Assembly?
Both the National Assembly and the executive. That's where they have a common ground. And that is where they have a romantic relationship.
A common ground against the people?
Some sort of, yes, because for us the people, the constitution is not a reflection of our wills, of our intention. We didn't make any input into the constitution. The constitution was a military decree number 24 of 1999. And we in the civil society, we would rather that constitution comes back to us and we make our input, the people actually make their inputs into the constitution, and it becomes the people's constitution, so that preamble, we the people of Federal Republic of Nigeria hereby give to ourselves the following constitution will have a real meaning and not a deceptive meaning. And that is where I see both of them having a romantic relationship.
We don't mean to deviate from the matter, but isn't that why they are holding the public hearings all over the country?
You cannot put something on nothing. The public hearing is drawing, the rope that is holding that public hearing is the rope of a decree. I don't know if you are getting my point. It is the strength that public hearing has is the strength of the constitution. They are working on the constitution, and that constitution as it stands, we say that it is a decree. And they are drawing their powers to hold public review from that same constitution that we are fighting.
Do you expect a suspension of the constitution for it to go on?
that is what we are saying. That is where they have common ground to do this, to come out with a romantic relationship. That's why they have a romantic relationship, and that's why the constitutional review is going as if there's no problem. Both of them are speaking in the same language. But
what you're asking for, what Sulaiman is asking is, are you not asking for the impossible? Because, I mean, the fact that we have a government at all rests on that.
It is not impossible. It is not impossible. The pragmatists, the realists will say whether you oppose it or not, whether you say what is reality, you may be thinking of utopia, but the constitutional review will go and they will implement what they want to implement. That's the pragmatists and the realists. But those of us who want justice in the society, those of us who know what it is to obtain constitutional governance, to obtain democratic governance, knows that you must allow the people to make an input into their constitution. And if you don't do that, whatever it is that you're operating on will always forever remain what it is, a decree, and it will remain not from the people, but by a group of cabal that gave it to the people. So it is not an impossibility.
It doesn't look like what we're asking for is an input. It looks like we're asking for the opportunity to rewrite the entire constitution.
Not just the opportunity to rewrite the entire constitution. If you look at the quantum of time that the sections of the constitution have been reviewed or amended as it were, you realize that just about half of the constitution is being reviewed. And if that is the case, why don't you go out to the length of coming out with a wholesome document that shows the input of the people? There's only one little thing there, and that little thing is not even in terms of the contents of the constitution, but it is in terms of taking that constitution to the people, asking the people from all dimensions to come and speak about that constitution and say, let us take this constitution for ourselves. That is the basis of constitution. It is not an impossibility. Maybe people will think it as an impossibility because it is difficult to dislodge the status quo, to dislodge the establishment, and that is what they have in common.
Now talking about, going back to the relationship, we were talking about SEC earlier and how, they have no allocation this year from the National Assembly.
Yes.
And you say, let's see how that, but when I asked that question about development, this is an example of what I was talking about.
Yes.
How politicking goes on and development is the one that suffers at the end of the day.
Exactly.
How do you see this playing out? Because obviously SEC most likely will have to go on. When 2013 comes, they will have to look for some ways to fund themselves. If this continues to be the matter, if it continues to be the status between the executive and the legislature, at least for development not to suffer. Will it not be justified
that they do what?
That they find some other source of funding?
It will be justified, but they have to be very careful not to breach the constitution, because as a government parastatal, any money you spend has to be appropriated. And when they go outside appropriated money to spend, it becomes a problem. And that is where the scenario becomes technical and very, very delicate. So I would say here that it is imperative that the National Assembly and the executive come together, let them work together. It doesn't mean that the National Assembly is imposing its views on the executive in terms of asking for Ote to be sacked. In point of fact, Bola Onagoruwa has been sacked from BPE. It doesn't really mean that there's an imposition of a resolution of the National Assembly on the executive. But when they work together and they look at the issues involved and they say, okay, for the common good, for the interest of Nigerians, for the interest of capital market, for the interest of investors, let us see what we can do to arrive at a compromise. It may not necessarily lead to the sacking of Ote, but it may need for the executive to come to working terms with the National Assembly and make them understand why Ote should remain on the seat. But it has to be transparent and it has to be dialogue. It has to be as a result of dialogue and compromise. Even if it means sacking Ote, so be it. Some of the issues that were raised against Ote are germane. The executive will do better to look at it and see whether it is important for the interest of development, like you said.